Welcome. Thank you for coming to the second student showcase. Today we've got 3 projects, and followed by that, it will be another question and answer. And as I said this morning, these are students who participated in this year's IVSS and earned top scores. So that is a 4-star research badge, as well as at least 2 of the additional badges. So these students did really great work in this year's International Virtual Science Symposium. And we're gonna see their presentations. And we're starting off with a video from our students from Malta.
Hello, I am Aiden.
I am Manna.
And I am Christabelle.
Together we are going to tell you the story of a tale of 10 zones.
All the staff and pupils took part in this story, and we used one simple instrument, the infrared thermometer, with great results. So let's get started.
Once upon a time, in a cold January morning of 2021, we chose 10 places to study their surface temperature. The surface's structures were very different and mysterious. We had tarmac, concrete, soil, synthetic turf, and shade, while others were facing the south and the north directions. We had 10 different places to check. Oh, what a headache!
Eureka! We could use the urban heat islands and surface temperature campaign to solve it. We used the globe surface temperature protocol to be precise and similar to other projects taking place across the whole world.
We started off by observing that the darker the surface, the higher the temperature. Now other questions popped up in our minds, like for example, what happens if the surface is not uniform, or if a northerly wind is blowing?
After more consultation, we concluded that we needed to prepare a result sheet for each day of the reading. Each sheet had to be divided into 10 sections according to the number of the different types of surfaces. We needed to train staff and pupils about how to hold the infrared thermometer when taking the temperature.
We chose 5 days with different climate conditions, and exactly at 11:15 we start taking the temperatures. That meant that we took 450 readings in all. Once all the data was collected, the average value for the temperature of each zone for each day was used for comparison reasons. 10 sites were created on the Globe website, and all data was uploaded by means of a laptop.
These are our results. For wet ground, the lowest average temperature recorded was that of concrete in the shade. The highest average temperature recorded was that of the south-facing soil.
For dry ground, the lowest average temperature was registered by the concrete. The highest temperature was registered by the synthetic fur.
The fact that in wet conditions the soil registered a higher temperature than that of the concrete could mean that this provides the ideal conditions for plant food production. However, the wet ground registered an overall lower average temperature. temperatures than that of dry ground.
On dry ground, synthetic materials like turf and concrete register slightly higher average temperatures than natural occurring elements like soil. By extrapolation, one might imply that built-up areas should register higher temperatures than those in the countryside.
Black surfaces like tarmac and treaded black rubber tires in the synthetic turf absorb a lot more heat, especially in the dry conditions. This is the opposite case of the average temperature of the naturally occurring materials. One can conclude that naturally occurring materials help in keeping low temperatures when the ambient temperature is high, while keeping a relatively high temperature when the ambient temperature is low, thus promoting ideal conditions for living things.
Dear Globe friends, we are very happy that we shared our project with you, and we thank you for your interest in it. We wish you all the best from sunny Gozo. Saha!
And next up, we've got our presenter from Saudi Arabia. And just a reminder, you have 7 minutes. Let me share my screen.
Okay. Hi, I'm Hala. I'm a student from the first Arqah High School in Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia. Today I'm going to be presenting a research my team and I have been working on. Our research is about the effect of pottery on brackish water in the KSA and its impact of soil and vegetation cover. In fact, the idea of this research is a complement from a past research. The past research was about the salinity of the kingdom's water and its effect on plant germination. And the writer of that research, she recommended to try pottery to improve the hydrological properties in the water. So from that point, we said, let's experiment it and see how true it actually is. Next slide, please. At the beginning of our work, we pointed out a couple of questions we needed to answer, which helped in defining our goals. These questions are listed in front of you. Next slide, please. As we all know, every research needs a work plan. Our work plan consists of these 7 steps that are shown in front of in the following table. And with that work plan, roles and tasks were given out. Then we went ahead and started to work on the research. Next slide, please. The beginning of it all started with the study site, which was located in Al-Subaie. It is a governorate of the Riyadh region in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We located the coordinates by using the GPS device. Next slide, please. Now for data collection and analysis, we applied 3 protocols. The first protocol we applied was the water protocol. We applied it to 4 samples. The first sample we took was from the brackish water in Al-Subaie, and the other 3 samples were the same as the first, but were placed inside the pottery at different periods of time. Then the results of the water were taken, which I'll show later in the following slides. And next slide, please. Also, we had a great help from the King Saud University, where they helped with identifying the percentages of the minerals in their laboratories. I'll talk about that more in depth later. Next slide, please. The second protocol was the soil protocol by taking 2 soil samples from 2 different locations along the path of the flow of the brackish water from the surface layer of the soil, and 2 other samples from the surface layer of soil irrigated with water treated by pottery. Next slide, please. The third protocol was the vegetation protocol. After the interview conducted with some of the people in Al-Subaie who depended on the water of the well for irrigation, palm trees are able to grow and adapt to this source of water, while the rest of the other plants cannot adapt to the amount of salinity in the water. As pictured, on your right, you can see the four pictures, you can see the firm dry soil and the phoenix. And right there on your top right, you can see the white substance caused by the amount of salinity in the water. As for the observations we got after treating the water with pottery, only it was found that there are a large number of crops that manage to live, such as watercress, green pepper, eggplant, mint, and others. And this is evidence of the change of water components as a result of treating it with pottery. And these 6 pictures, which are found on your left, shows the big difference between the pictures on the right. And the third picture on your top left, with the red circle marking it right down below, you can see the pottery placed in the soil. Next slide, please. Here are the results after applying the water protocol to the 4 samples. Transparency and temperature stayed the same, while electrical conductivity, salinity, and acidity went very low. As for oxygen, it went up. Next slide, please. As we can all see, there happened to be a big difference between the well water and after placing the well water in the pottery for a couple of weeks. We can see that the sodium has gone down and went to 77.4, and it's one of the most important factors that affects in the salinity. And you can also see the potassium has gone down too. Next slide, please. By applying the soil protocol, the following results were obtained, which are the chemical properties of the soil, both irrigated with the well water and the other was irrigated with pottery water. The soil irrigated with well water had higher carbonate in the acidity than the soil irrigated with pottery water. Next slide, please. And as for the physical properties, of the soil both irrigated with well water and the other soil that was irrigated with pottery water, the soil with the well water didn't contain as much rocks and roots and wasn't as friable as the pottery water. Next slide, please. The third protocol was the vegetation protocol based on the MUC terminology guide. The MUC number for vegetation was 1123. The land cover protocol was applied on an area of 32 by 32 after irrigating the crops with well water in Al-Guaiya. The following results are shown on the table placed on your right. As for the plants, they were all phoenix, covering small areas. Next slide, please. After irrigating the crops with pottery water based on the MUC terminology guide, turned out to be 4222. The land protocol was applied on an area which was 3 by 3. The following results are shown on the table placed on your right. After identifying the plants, there were a lot different kinds than the slide before. You can see that plants differed, such as capsicum bacatum, ocimum, Eruca sativa, and others. Next slide, please.
Okay, and you've got 1 minute left.
Okay. Next slide, please. We found that the concentration of the slide before. We found that the concentration of the trees was covering 80% from the soil, irrigating with brackish well water, the well water area, but the other area, which was treated by pottery, covered 95% of it. The research team never expected the 15% difference, but rather than that, the 80% coverage was all phoenix, and not as the 95% coverage was varied in different kinds of plants. Next slide, please. The data collected was entered and sent to the program's website via the application. Next slide, please. The numbers and data that have been reached indicates that there are signs and indications on the ability of pottery to cause chemical changes to the properties of the water, which reflects on increasing soil fertility and the possibility of growing many crops. Also, pottery has proven its ability to reduce the amount of salinity in the water, and the application of the study can be generalized in tanks covered in pottery, as it can be converted into green lands at the lowest cost. and with a high ability to rationalize the consumption of desalinated water. Next slide, please. Finally, we sincerely thank those in charge of the Environmental Globe program for granting the opportunity to join the team and do many experiments and research. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great job. Next up, we've got students from Spain. And a reminder, you've got 7 minutes.
Hola, somos Natalia y Lena y os vamos a presentar el proyecto El sitio de mi recreo. Es un estudio comparativo de la temperatura superficial entre zonas urbanizadas y arboladas en el entorno de Gredos, Piedrahíta, Ávila, Next. La motivación que puedo hacer desde el patio de mi colegio para dar a conocer la situación de emergencia climática. Next. Comenzamos nuestro trabajo estudiando ejemplos de Green Cities y sobre todo estudiando el efecto de isla de calor. Las preguntas de investigación: si la naturaleza de los materiales que forman parte del suelo de nuestro centro educativo son diferentes, registraremos temperaturas superficiales diferentes. Si la cobertura vegetal actúa de reguladora del clima, observaremos menos fluctuaciones de temperatura en las zonas arboladas y herbáceas que en las zonas de asfalto.
Next slide, please.
Creemos que la zona de asfalto será más caliente que la zona de herbáceas y esta a su vez más caliente que la zona de arbolado. Next. El objetivo del proyecto es analizar las diferencias de temperatura superficial que se dan en las distintas zonas del patio de nuestro centro educativo, con la finalidad de valorar, por un lado, la influencia de la cobertura vegetal y, por otro, poder establecer zonas idóneas para practicar distintas actividades de exterior, que pueden ser deportivas, educativas, de ocio. Next. El material que hemos utilizado son las fichas de recogida de datos, la caseta meteorológica, el GPS, la cinta métrica y el termómetro de infrarrojos. Next. El método: identificación y descripción de las zonas de muestreo, la zona 1 de asfalto, la zona 2 arbolada y la zona 3 de herbáceas, como podéis ver en la imagen. Next. Identificación y descripción de las zonas del muestreo, como podéis ver en las imágenes, estaban midiendo y georreferenciando las zonas de muestreo. Next. Después hemos obtenido los datos, como los podéis ver en las imágenes, estábamos obteniendo las diferentes temperaturas con el termómetro de infrarrojos. Next. Y por último, el análisis de datos, que lo hemos hecho mediante la aplicación del Globe, que es la que hemos utilizado para realizar el proyecto. Y continúa mi compañera Natalia.
Next slide, please.
Next, please. Vale, pues yo soy Natalia y voy a deciros cómo hemos utilizado gráficas y tablas en las que hemos ido colocando nuestros datos que hemos obtenido en nuestra investigación, y en esta diapositiva podéis observar las distintas temperaturas de las distintas zonas que hemos ido obteniendo a lo largo de los días, su media, la temperatura del aire y la desviación. Next, please. En esta observamos 3 gráficos distintos en los que cada gráfico está la comparación de temperatura superficial de cada zona con su temperatura atmosférica. Next. A mi derecha tenemos un gráfico en el que comparamos las distintas desviaciones de cada zona, y a mi izquierda una comparativa de todas las temperaturas de cada zona. Viendo que en la zona de patio 1, que es la de asfalto, es la que presenta más variación, hemos utilizado la humedad para nuestro trabajo. Next. Please. Ya en estos gráficos podemos ver la comparativa de las temperaturas superficiales de cada zona con la humedad relativa, Y en este gráfico pues hemos podido observar que cuanto mayor es la humedad, más bajas son las temperaturas de nuestras zonas. Y en el otro gráfico podemos ver las comparativas de la comparación de la temperatura superficial de la zona 3, que es la zona de herbáceas, con su humedad relativa. Next, please. Esta es una gráfica que hemos utilizado del programa Globe para nuestro trabajo. Next, please. Hemos llegado a las siguientes conclusiones con nuestro trabajo. La primera conclusión es que los meses en los que realizamos nuestro trabajo, como son octubre, noviembre y diciembre, no eran la mejor época para realizarlo porque había muy pocas horas de luz y eran los meses más lluviosos. También que en los días en que está el cielo totalmente cubierto de nubes o parcialmente o llueve, hay muy poca variación de temperatura en las distintas zonas en nuestras distintas zonas, porque el sol no incide con fuerza. También que en los días soleados, independientemente de la cobertura del suelo, hemos observado que hay más temperatura en las zonas en las que hay menos árboles y esto está directamente relacionado con la humedad relativa del aire. Por último, aunque no encontremos diferencias significativas en nuestras zonas de muestreo, sí podemos contestar a nuestra pregunta de investigación diciendo que un terreno de asfalto se calienta y se enfría antes que uno de cobertura vegetal independiente, y que la influencia del arbolado, independientemente de la cobertura del suelo, tiene que ver con esto y por tanto con la humedad para regular la temperatura. De modo que creemos que tanto en ciudades como en centros educativos se deberían de plantar más árboles o que haya zonas más arboladas para regular el efecto de isla de calor que ha mencionado antes mi compañera y para mitigar los efectos del cambio climático. Next, please. Next, please. Next. Y ahora pues esta es una imagen de un blog que hemos montado con los compañeros al realizar nuestro trabajo, en el que hemos ido publicando nuestros resultados a medida que los íbamos obteniendo. Next, please. Las distintas entradas del blog. Next, please. Y estos son unos canvas que también hemos hecho en el que hablábamos de la ubicación de las distintas zonas de muestreo, algunas de las observaciones que hemos hecho, algunas actividades recomendadas para cada zona y unas curiosidades de nuestro pueblo. Next, please. En la bibliografía, que son los lugares en los que hemos consultado información y nos hemos apoyado. Next, please. Y estos son nuestros compañeros con los que hemos realizado el trabajo en nuestra clase del instituto. Y muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much. Great job. So now please enter your questions for the students in our chat in the attendee hub. You can ask students for any of our three groups. So the students from Malta, our student from Saudi Arabia, as well as the students from Spain. Great job, students.
So Amy, this is Peter. We actually have some questions coming in already. So I'd like to go ahead and ask those. Do we have the same 5 minutes for the Q&A or do we have a bit longer?
Yes, 5 minutes.
So the first question is for the students from Malta. And the question is, what inspired you to do the research with surface temperature in Malta?
We might actually not have any of our representatives from Malta today.
Gotcha. Okay, well then I will move on to the next question. The next one is to Hala in Saudi Arabia. And the question is, how did you narrow down your research question from the long list you started with?
First of all, we just First of all, we decided what goals we wanted to find, and then we divided the goals into questions so it could be more easier for us to answer them and make sure everything's neat and nice.
Great. Okay. Another question for you is, let's see here. Is there a minimum time that the water must stay in the pottery for this to be effective?
The longer it stays, the more effective it is. So maybe minimum a week.
Gotcha. Okay. And then for our Spanish, team, do I pose a question, and I assume pose a question in English? Would that be fine?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, my colleague who speaks much better Spanish than I do, she is going to go ahead and read a question to you in Spanish. So hopefully that helps. So Mindy, if you want to go ahead and unmute, thank you.
Entonces, ustedes estudiaron el efecto del color de las superficies sin vegetación, por ejemplo, tierra o cimiento o asfalto.
And perhaps can you repeat that in English so that the other students who don't understand Spanish can understand what the question was?
Elena o Natalia, no sé si queréis contestar.
And the question in, oh.
No, hable.
Okay, I'm the teacher. I represent my students, and the type of soil that we use was asphalt. We divided in 3 different zones, one of them with asphalt, other with herbaceous, another with herbaceous and trees.
And Mindy, would you like to repeat the question in English?
Yes. So the question in English was if the students studied the color of the surfaces without vegetation, like asphalt or foundation or earth.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got time for one more question.
Do we have another question for our Spanish team?
We do not.
Okay, well, let's see if we can post one. So for our team in Spanish, let me see, what was the most fascinating thing about your research? What was the thing that interested you the most when you did your research?
Can I translate to my students and they answer in Spanish?
Yes, please.
Natalia, Elena, ¿cuál ha sido lo más interesante de hacer este trabajo, esta investigación?
Pues darnos cuenta de la emergencia climática que había en nuestro pueblo.
The importance of climate change in our city, in our little town. Natalia?
Sí, y yo iba a decir que también darnos cuenta que, aunque parezca que no, que un poco del cambio climático sí va afectando a nuestro pueblo. Y eso pues sorprende un poco.
Is the same, the answer more or less, that they surprised about the effect of climate change in our little town, because we live in a little town with 200 inhabitants. And in comparison with a big city, we realize that there are effects about climate change.
There's some great answers. That's the exact answer we would love to hear, is the importance of climate change. So with this, we're going to go ahead and turn it over back to Amy and say, once again, thank you all for doing your research during a very difficult year. I can't imagine how difficult it was for you guys to go out and do this research and come together as a team, but a great job and congratulations to all of you.
And I just want to second what Peter said. The students did a wonderful job, and we've got 1 or 2 more sessions tomorrow for students to present their research. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Pleased to meet you, Amy.
You too.